Well, thank you, Chamberlain. We're turning our attention to gender issues, totally not unrelated with what you've been talking about. How did women fare in the 2019 general elections? From what we understand, a representation of women, and I'm saying our here very advisedly, has dropped again from 5.9%, from what we understand, in the 2015 general elections to about 3.5%. What is responsible for this? I'm now being joined now by Mary Ikoku, who is an advocate for inclusion of women in politics. You're welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thanks for having me, Maupe.
Well, I'm sure that you're as worried as I am, this dropping numbers of women in politics,
right.
Women representation in our political system. What is going on?
I wish I have the right answer, but I know that there are a couple of issues that have stopped women from making a lot of progress, particularly in this last election. This last election was a very funny one, because the introduction of vote buying is one major issue that even the few women that made it through their primaries and were able to become candidates of their various political parties. The vote buying issue was one major thing that also kicked them out of the race, where they didn't have not a lot of political watchers to match up, with the men in terms of vote buying. This is not a nice narrative, unfortunately, but this is happening.
But even
in
before
our
vote
society.
buying came up, quite a number of media houses had flagged the participation of women. For some people, the outcomes might not be surprising because it would seem that even from the candidature, from what we saw, the emergence of women as candidates in the primaries of political parties, not a lot of women emerged when you look at the number of men. I think the ratio they said was about 12-1. Are you really surprised about, what we eventually saw was the outcome in terms of the number of women voted into office?
I would think the ratio isn't even about 12-1. It's probably 20 or 50-1. Because who is doing the statistics? We're really not taking this data seriously. And politics is, you win elections with data. So when I think about what is going on, I think all of us, I think the nation really have to find a more creative ways towards women inclusion. It may be party-led, party-driven candidate selection, where every political party would ensure that certain level of quota is being put forward for the women inclusion, even the youth, So, and that's where the national gender policy will come in here. That gender policy is something we may have to legislate on and ensure that it finds its way into our law book so that INEC will have a stronger point to hold political parties accountable. If you want to register your political party, you're coming for electioneering, and INEC will be able to have enough ground to say, according to the law, according to the gender policy, maybe the INEC gender, the person representing the gender office in INEC may be able to say, you haven't fulfilled this quota in your selection process. So when we begin to see things like that, it may help. And also, if you look at public financing into our electioneering process, it will help also in the sense that I remember there's a governorship candidate that I worked with in the last election. There are a couple of them where I had to contribute to their strategy development. But a few of them are not very eager to go into fundraising because some of them say, oh, their opponents will say they don't have money. Really, should you be running election with your personal money? You're going to serve the public. You're running for a public office. You should be able to crowdsource. You should be able to fundraise. You should be able to do public financing and ask for help. Because when we do that, people who have the right heart to serve, people who are competent, people with character, people with great values will begin to show up because they know that the people who would want to give them their mandate will be willing to also contribute towards that mandate.
Now, you're talking about legislation, and,
Yes.
and some people say that's looking forward now because we have very few off-season elections. Maybe legislation will be able to work for some of those off-season elections. But every time we talk to political parties, they will say, oh, we're doing our best. Forms for women in our parties are free. You know, they tell you how much they're doing. Has that really had any effect? Or do you think that political parties, for now, are merely paying lip service to including women in the mainstream politics?
I would choose the latter. You know, when you talk about giving women our forms are for free, well, the forms were not free in the last election for women. And when they tell you
really
that
make a difference.
It doesn't make a difference.
Said that was
for me,
tokenism.
I think giving women forms for free is some kind of tokenism. It doesn't solve the problem. Why do I think so? You give me a form for free, and then you do not create a level playing ground where all of us can struggle and win elections. If the ground is disproportionate, even with my free form, I cannot win election. Secondly, you give me a form for free. I am also it's easier for me to be compromised in the sense that you can ask me, the man who paid for his form would go all out to canvass for voters, right? And then I have a free form. Even no matter how much work I do in terms of canvassing for votes and trying to win votes, you know, if I have not, when the fool comes to short, the party may also ask me to step down. The one thing I'll be reminded, after all, Maokwe, you didn't really pay for your form. You really don't have anything to lose, right? Okay, maybe you can chill for this season. We let this man go. We will give you a commissioner at the end of the day. And you and I know that even as a commissioner, you really can't push a lot of things. But if you really want to serve and you have the heart and desire to serve, you should begin early enough. That's why I tell a lot of women, there were also a lot of unpreparedness on the side of a lot of the females that ran for office. And in the same vein, when you are not so prepared in terms of your political watches, have you mopped up enough money to even canvas for votes? I'm not talking about monies that they put in the wrong places.
So women also
talking about the basic.
Women also carry a fair share of this blame for the numbers that we're seeing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for the numbers we're seeing, yes, we carry a fair share of the blame, but not that is so insignificant compared to the number of years of patriarchy and the amount of gap that has created in the system. So what you have here is something that started as a culture, and it dovetailed into a systemic rule where you're no longer having a proportional representation. We must begin to seek proportional representation. It must rule in our democracy, because that is really the only time we can begin to say that we have a true democracy.
Were you hopeful when candidates like Mrs. Obi Ezekwesili joined the presidential race? What did that do for you?
I got excited about it. In fact, my organization, Emerge Women, we were one of the few organizations that were propping her on to join the race. By the time she joined, she joined that race because she hasn't seen a lot of credible candidates stepping out. And then she thought also that the two that she felt were two of the same, was still having the upper hand. So she felt there to be someone to salvage the system, and she jumped into the race. It got me excited. I was very happy that she joined the race. And we also, as women of this country, played our part in supporting her.
Last minute.
Yes, she pulled out last minute. And you and I know why she pulled out. There were issues. She did a press conference where she listed those issues. And one of the items on her list was she didn't want to compromise her values. And honestly, Maokwe, we need to begin to have a system where value, character, competences are very important in our political system. And until we begin to do that, we will continue to have anyhow people in our political system. And you will be getting anyhow policies, anyhow outcomes.
That should
so
go for
that's anyhow
either
laws.
men or women, you know.
Yeah.
People of character should go for either men or women. Well, we have to take a break now. Okay. When we come back, we'll be asking whether, since we did not get it through election, should we be looking at appointment? Will that work? Will that really serve the purpose? In just a moment, please stay with us. Yes. Well, Mary Ikoku is still with us in the studio. She's an advocate for women inclusion in politics. And we're asking now, our closing moments with her, should we be asking for appointments? I mean, how fierce should that demand be? Or is there still room for women representation through elections?
Absolutely. Appointed position would really be the other way to correct this menace, because really is a problem where, like the entire country, it's like we're running on a single, you have two legs, but you're working with one. How does that feel? You're not going to achieve a lot. So we need to bring in more women. And I think one way we can fix it, where you have only 7 women in the Senate, only about 11 women in the House of Representatives. And there's also a female candidate who is running for speakership. I think a good way to start is to ensure that she deserves it. I think she should be made the speaker. When you have a female speaker, and then Honorable Nkiru Joshua, if she becomes the speaker, I'm talking about the ways we can close this gap by appointing women into very top-level strategic leadership positions. So this is one woman who has done creditably well over the years, a ranking member, highly competent, have pushed forward a lot of bills that are having human faces and have done well at it. And those bills have been assented to laws by the president. What that tells you is that this woman is very consistent, and she's been in the House, a ranking member, and that's one of the qualifications that they need. So why can't they make such a woman a speaker? And again, she has also inspired.
Position. That is
electable. That's, you ask both for appointment and election. So that's one elective position pending, and she can become. And even in the Senate, they can get a deputy speaker who is a woman. Then you come to the executive arm. Mr. President has already promised to increase the number of women. I hope he would, at the very least, ensure a 35% representation in his appointment, if he cannot do 50. 35% is a better way to start. Then at the state level, we're also asking the governors of the various states should really, really search. You don't even need to search. They are all over the place. They are all over the state. They are all over the country, across sectors, across religion. There's so many women, competent, highly competent, women with character, women that have the skills that we need to move this country forward. And it will be very good for the president, the governors-elect of the various states to really think seriously about women inclusion, appointing women into positions that would also fill in the gap and close the gender gap, really, pretty much.
We've already been wrapped up now, and it's a fine place to leave it before I'm accused of bias because I'm a woman. But I have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Thank you for speaking with us. Mary Ikoku is a women inclusion advocate in politics, and she's also the publisher of Working Moms magazine. It's a magazine I'd like to see. But that's been the program this morning. We understand that the NGF the NGF forum is going on for governors. I hope that that's something that they will be including on the menu. Gender inclusion and gender equality. Thank you for watching this morning. I'm Mao Yusuf.
What kind of trouble is my better to create this morning? All right, thank you for watching as well. I'm Chamberlain.
Well, the studio is actually hot now. You cannot see everything now at the moment, but I can guarantee you that we're having discussions behind the scenes, even with guests that are ought to have left, but the discussion will always continue. The economy, according to the president, is one of the priorities of this government, and they must get it right. Those jobs must come up.
Yeah.
is sacrosanct. But how they go about getting those jobs done will be the big question for them. I'm Gimba Umar.
Rabayo Makinde asking you to keep the conversation on wherever you are.
Indeed.
Which one of them? The gender one in the Nigerian Governors Forum?
All the conversation.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.